Welcome back to the Broadman Word, and we are continuing with the life of Joseph. But more importantly, we're going to see the how the brothers react, and Joseph reacts to this plan that he's putting forward to bringing Benjamin, the youngest son of Jacob, and of course Joseph's brother, to Egypt. So, with that, turn back to Genesis chapter 42, verse 18. On the third day, so this is after the 3 days where all the brothers, are detained, I guess is a better word for it. Said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God." And I think it's interesting that he mentions this right away. I think it's almost, is it possible it could be a hint? He's giving them a hint like, hey, maybe you do know me. Maybe. But I think it's more the idea that he is trying to create this connection with them more than anything else. But could it be a little bit of a hint at his true identity as their long lost brother Joseph? Maybe. I won't say that's not the case. Verse 19. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. So it's so the idea is that they will keep one of the brothers, and he will stay in detainment in Egypt, most likely either under house arrest or possibly in an actual prison. We will see that a little bit later on. But the idea is to go back, get Benjamin, and then if they do that, then they won't be seen as spies. Again, Joseph knows that they're not spies, but he is testing them to see, has their character changed in any way? And so they go and talk it out. Verse 21. Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." And so, verse 21, it's starting to, the change that Joseph is hoping for, it is starting. They are clearly just realizing they've done something wrong. Yes, there's beginning to be remorse for it in a different way than what we'll see later on, of course. But there is starting to be remorse for it, and they see that, look, the things that are going on with them right now, that could be translated back to the sin that they did against their brother, hatred, almost wanting to murder him. I mean, and so the thing that I want to bring up here is this: when you and I sin as believers, there are times where bad things happen to us after. Now, it could be that the bad things that happen to us after we sin could be very much connected to the sins themselves, whether it's direct consequences or indirect consequences. God can use trials and temptations to wake you and I up to the sins that we have committed. However, that's not always the case. Especially in church history, there's a lot of times where we see people, believers, assuming that the bad things that have fallen upon somebody are directly because of the sin that they have done. We actually see this in the New Testament with I believe it's the blind man, when Jesus heals the blind man. And he goes and says, "Look, I was blind, but now I see." But then they bring his parents, and they're like, "Well, wait a second. Is this is this because of a sin that he has done? No, he's always been blind. So the point that is that when something bad happens to you after your sin, that doesn't always mean that it's directly connected with your sin. But here, I think that is the case. The things that are happening to the brothers, this remorse and this guilt that they feel is directly connected to the things that they have done. And my guess is the time in between when Joseph was sold into slavery until now, they probably have been pretty miserable. That's my guess, especially when it comes to the fact that their father Jacob has been miserable himself. But then Reuben chimes in. And if you remember, Reuben was the brother that walked away and was not part of the scheme to sell Joseph into slavery. Go back with me to the passage when it comes to his being sold into slavery. So we are going to go all the way back to, I believe it's Genesis 37. Yes. So it's Genesis 37. So they wanted to kill him, but Reuben says, we're not going to kill him. Instead, Reuben's idea was that they were going to maybe beat him up a little bit, but then they were going to, quote unquote, save him from the wilderness and then show their father that they have, quote unquote, saved his favorite son, being Joseph. That, I think, was Reuben's plan, but it has gone completely wrong because he left his brothers with Joseph, and then the other brothers sold him into slavery. Now it's interesting Reuben's response here. Verse 22. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. Now, it's interesting, verse 22. It's Reuben saw the blood that was on the coat of many colors that they gave to Jacob to show him that Joseph has died in the wilderness by wild animals. Is it possible that Reuben has no idea that they sold him into slavery? I think so. Especially with how he phrases it in verse 22. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. Now, you could say his bloodline, and that would make sense if he knew that they sold him into slavery. Me personally, I think he's talking about the blood on the coat of many colors. And so therefore, I think Reuben is actually in the dark about this, and he is in the same boat as Jacob, believing that Joseph is dead. Now, we'll see if that's the case later on, but me personally, from what I can tell from this passage, I think he has no clue what actually happened. Verse 23. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept, and he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in a sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. And this was done for them. So, the scheme that Joseph has to bring Benjamin back, it seems like they have decided on that being the case. Then he decides to take one of the oldest brothers, Simeon, and he is the one that gets thrown into prison. And you may be thinking, why isn't it Reuben? My guess is that Joseph knew that Reuben was not there. And so is it a moment of grace for Reuben that he doesn't put Reuben in detention or in prison? Possibly. But I think that might be a really interesting point. That's why he took Simeon and not Reuben, is because he knew Reuben was not among the brothers when he was sold into slavery. That's totally possible. Again, is that a vindictive nature against Simeon? I don't think so. I think it's more just the idea that he is serious about his scheme. Now, I do think it's interesting that there was an interpreter between them. Is this a nod to Joseph forgetting Hebrew? I, maybe, but I think the interpreter between them, it might be Joseph himself, because it does say they did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. It's possible that Joseph might be the interpreter himself, but I think it's equally possible that there was actually somebody there. So he tells he fills their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack. Again, I think he does that out of the love for his family and for his father, and his family being his brothers sold him into slavery, right? Which is kind of interesting. Verse 26, then they loaded their donkeys with their grain and left. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. He said to his brothers, my money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. At this, their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? Just one quick thing about this. I mean, obviously, this can be seen as treason and back up the point that they are spies. Obviously, Joseph did it out of love for his father, and at the core, still love for his brothers, not wanting to see them perish from the famine. But it's interesting how they respond. What is this that God has done to us? I think it's interesting that they know that the Lord is the one that is behind everything that's taking place. Even though they have no clue what's going on, they know that he's behind everything. Verse 29, when they came to Jacob their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, we are honest men. We have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. So it's just, again, a rehashing of the plan that Joseph has put into place. They tell their father that, and I think it's interesting that they tell him exactly how they describe themselves as honest men. And again, they have been keeping the secret from their father that Joseph has not actually been killed, but they sold him into slavery. And even though they don't know he's this Lord of the land, that's who he is. And so I think it's interesting that they keep that description in there. We are honest men in verse 31. So let's see how Jacob responds. Verse 35, as they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were afraid. So not only so when they stopped at the lodging, they only checked one brother's sack and was afraid. Now they feel, oh my gosh, everybody's money is back. This is really bad. And Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin. All this has come against me. First off, this is a huge statement. You have bereaved me, so taken away. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, now you would take Benjamin. So it's interesting how he describes this. He believes Joseph is dead. Now, he indirectly So he believes that the brothers indirectly were the cause for Joseph's death. That's what he believes. They should have taken better uh, care after him. But then I think the phrase at the end, "all this has come against me," I'm almost wondering if Jacob is feeling guilt as a father for sending his son um, out in the wilderness to go find his brothers. And maybe he's thinking, if I didn't do that, if I went, or if one of the servants went with Joseph or with myself, then Joseph would still be with us. And he's probably right, but that's the guilt that Jacob is holding on to. Again, he doesn't know that Joseph is alive, but I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting that he feels the guilt for that, and then that guilt then is passed on to Simeon because now Simeon's in prison for Joseph. Being dead, maybe. And now, because of Simeon, now he's possibly going to lose Benjamin. So, verse 37, then Reuben said to his father, "Kill my two sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you." So, again, Reuben being, I believe, the oldest of the sons of Jacob, and again being the one that I believe that does not know that Joseph is actually alive, of the brothers. He now the question is, would he actually kill his sons? I obviously I want to say I doubt it, but what this is. He's basically making an analogy to how important and valued he finds his father, but also his youngest brother in Benjamin, which is obviously a huge turnaround because Reuben, yes, he didn't want to kill Joseph, but he still didn't like the guy, and but now the same but now the youngest brother, who is the brother of Rachel and was probably favored by Jacob still, even though Joseph, I think, had more favor, being the first son of Rachel. He sees that and he's like, look, I get it. And so I'm going to protect Benjamin with my life. But Jacob, not so sure. Verse 38, but Jacob said, "My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead," being Joseph, and he is the only one left. Now, this then, I think shows why Reuben is so remorseful in verse 37, is so serious in verse 37 because of the connection that Joseph and Benjamin have to Rachel, who has died. So I think that is what he means by, and he is the only one left. He's the only connection that I have to their mother, who I dearly loved. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol, which makes a lot of sense. To lose a child is incredibly sad and brings a lot of grief, and so that grief very much could lead to Jacob's death. And so that makes a lot of sense. And so, with that, that is where we'll leave off. So, will Jacob finally let Benjamin go down, or will they have to do something else instead? So, we will see that though next week, and I will see you then for the Broadman word. Thanks.